It is the fall season and someone calls out to someone by saying baby. The person tells the darling that the autumn leaves look beautiful and asks if they don't think so. The person asks what the reason is that the leaves turn red. Some toddler says that as autumn approaches, the leaves start to fall. The falling of a leaf announces the arrival of autumn, says the 4-year-old Tenab Demini. The girl says, "Oh my God," and declares that she is brilliant. The other boy says and asks if they would like to take a closer look. He tells them to come here as the baby stubs her toe and falls on her face while the girl calls her by saying Miss Tenab and asks if she is okay. The girl says she is fine as she tries to stand up by herself. They look at her knee and there is blood on the baby's knee. The girl touches her wound and by her magic spell she is able to heal it and tries not to even leave a scratch. The boy says that is amazing, just as expected from the holy successor. The girl says that she is only 4 years old, but she is already using divine power. The girl tsks to herself and says that it is still not fully healed. If she were a normal girl, she would have liked to receive praise, but she is not, because the scene cuts to the girls praising the girl by saying of course that is their baby and asking how she can be so cute and amazing. The girl gets flustered by what this is. The other girl says that she can be a little spoiled. She thinks to herself to let her go priestesses. What is inside this body is not a baby. She is the supreme master of martial arts of the SA sect, Jean Danye. The girl says that is right. Her real name is Jean Danye. She is the martial arts master who unified Sapa, a giant that casts a shadow over the martial arts world. Although she was an orphan soul for a few cents, she met a good master. She even gained loyal disciples. She thought she did not have much time left. Blood is everywhere and the girl screams Yo Juan and asks damn you. Does she think she can get away with something like this? She says master and that she is sorry. The girl screams now as she is thrown off a cliff. She asks herself if this is the end. It was all in vain. She was stabbed in the back by one of her students. That moment when she thought she was going to die. A girl holds her hand and says finally, they met again. My soul. She met a strange woman. The girl says what and asks is it God? But the girl says please this time. As the other asks herself why her face looks just like hers. A water droplet falls and the scene cuts to a baby who opened her eyes. A lady screams Tenab and says she finally woke up as she cries. She asks how she knows how worried her mom was and calls her daughter. The girl thought to herself that she is her mother. She thought she was an orphan. No, before that, she died. The girl was confused. She looked at herself in the mirror and said her hair color and eye color were strange. She had become a 4-year-old girl. The girl grunts as she begins to vomit on her mother. The mother yells at her asking why she is like this. She says darling and drops her on the bed. She asks why her daughter is like this and asks if she is seriously ill. The baby thinks to herself that she is in such a strange place. But the surprise did not last long. The mother says Tenab and asks if she feels better now as she hugs her. Tenab's mother is Marquise Iber. The girl says that she had experienced all kinds of hardships in her previous life. The baby girl says yes and says she is so sorry for causing her worry. Mother, while making a cute face, the mother was overwhelmed by her cuteness. The girl says to herself that she quickly adapted to this situation. Other girls say that the baby's smile is cute and the other girl agrees. Meanwhile, Tenab thinks to herself that she is still not used to it. The mother says that she is really surprised when she suddenly threw up the other day. When she suffers, a mother's heart breaks as she brings her daughter close to her. She plays with her and says but if she throws up on her clothes again, she will not forgive her. This startles Tenab. She tells her to hug her more. If she shows her how much she cannot live without her, will she not come with her to the Holy Kingdom as well? The girl thinks to herself as expected. This person distanced themselves from her when what happened the other day occurred. It was not a mistake. The person called her biological mother is really someone who has no choice but to use her daughter. She needs to cut ties with this woman quickly. Tenab glares at the mother and thinks to herself she cannot be the leech of someone who still has not matured. She tells her mother to use her. The mother says she has been doing that for a long time. The girl thinks to herself alright, she will use her methods. In the past, when she trained hard for a long time, she could use all her strength. She will use her voice to the roar of the lion. The girl screams to not lock her in the room and says it was all her fault. The people around her were shocked by what the girl just said. The mother was startled. The girl screams that she is very scared and says please. The servants around her get confused and say what? Lock? Is the baby asking not to be locked up? The mother gets pissed off and says no. Why is she behaving like this? She never said anything like that. Tenab thinks to herself that well, now she has not said that. But she said it a while ago, did she not? Everyone knows that she often locked her in a room and let her go hungry. Because people surround her and one of them asks what she meant by locking up. She firmly holds his hand and says that she locked her up. It is a very dark and ugly room. The girl thinks to herself because she has all of Teneb's memories. All 5 of them stand together and start a ritual. The girl did not like the flash by the magic and closed her eyes. A bright pink light appears and the scene cuts to the castle. The girl asks herself this is, and screams this is the next holy king has arrived. The crowd tells the baby to please look this way. The girl's voice screams that this is the holy kingdom. The scene cuts to the girl sleeping on her bed. She says to herself that after waking up in the body of young Teneb and being bedridden for 3 days, that woman she saw at the cliff says, Teneb, come back to me. Teneb showed her all her memories, as if she needed to know everything. The death of the Marquis and the collapse of her family that occurred right after her birth. From that point, they abuse her, Eve. By the age of 4, she finally had the luck to escape her confinement. A pastor says that a prophecy has been given that Teneb will succeed him as the Holy King. Teneb says to herself that even after being adopted by the Holy King, Teneb's divine power never showed. Her life and position as heir grew more dangerous by the day. Eventually, at the age of 20, Teneb lost her claim to the Holy King's position, meaning a tragic end. Teneb lived her entire life miserably, only to die miserably. The scene cuts back to the man asking Teneb what is Gumbang. She holds his hand and says Gumbang is a super scary room as she cries to him. She says to herself that she is sick of it, too. A tragic end like that. The mother says Teneb, if she says it like that, people will misunderstand. As she holds her mouth, the mother makes a very pissed off face and says it is just about a teddy bear being alone in a room and getting scared. Is that not right? The mother says it is really just about the teddy bear. So do not worry as she holds her mouth. Everyone gets very concerned. The girl says in her head that it is lies. A man in a uniform approaches her by saying baby and says excuse me for a moment. The girl was frightened as he picks her up. The man asks if she is alright. Teneb thinks to herself, oh, this person, black hair and violet eyes, features of the imperial royal family, wearing the mark of the commander of the Holy Knights despite his young age. The mother gets pissed off and asks the meaning of this and why he is taking the child without permission. He says that the baby seemed uncomfortable. Teneb thinks to herself that he is the second son of the Archduke, Esram. From now on, he will personally attend to the baby, says the commander of the Holy Knights, Esram. He says that so, if the mother wishes to see the baby before heading to the Holy Kingdom, she will have to speak with him first. The mother, all frightened, asks what did he say. Esram says let's go now, baby. Teneb had this relieved look on her face. The mother says ha. She wondered who the child was picking up strange speech from. That rude brat. She will regret this when they reach the Holy Kingdom. She will make sure to tell them how poorly Flambe treated her, the biological mother of the next Holy King. The scene cuts to a pearly mansion and it is night time, so Esram tucks Teneb in and says well, then please rest well, baby. Teneb thinks to herself that guy. Esram says that from now on, he will protect her, so do not worry. Teneb gets concerned and says thank you while stuttering. She thinks to herself why he is helping her this much. In the memories that guy also ignored Teneb. Teneb gets confused and says to herself she guesses memories are full of gaps while sighing. That woman did not give her a proper explanation either. The past life girl yells at her asking why she is showing her this memories and why she looks exactly alike. The blonde girl comes close and puts a throne on her head. She says what is she supposed to do with these memories? Start over. Teneb clenches her fist and says if she is giving her information, at least do it properly. She gets pissed off and says after throwing a bunch of messy memories at her, now she pompously asks her to start over. Esram from far away asks if Teneb is alright. The scene cuts to the morning and the girl, still pissed off, says she cannot just rely on memories. She needs another weapon. She tries meditating but then asks herself why this is not working. If she acts differently from Teneb, variables might occur. A magical light appears on her hand and she says she got it. So she can control divine power just like inner energy. First, she needs to figure out this divine power or whatever. Teneb hears a knocking on her door saying it is Priest Sherry. She says it is time to leave for the Holy Kingdom. Shall she help her prepare, since it might be difficult for her to do alone? The girl says no, it is okay, she will handle this herself. She says to herself that she is getting stronger on her own comes first. The scene cuts to the ritual, and the baby almost falls asleep. Esram asks if she is awake. Teneb gets shocked and tells herself she fell asleep while letting her guard down. She asks what time it is. Esram says to not worry, everything is packed and ready to go. The mother puts her briefcase down and says Tinub looks peaceful. All pissed off says she looks so happy while glaring at her. Tinub says to herself that it is better than being carried by that woman. Esram says then, since everyone seems ready, let's depart. As he turns around, the mother shocked says to herself if he just ignored her. Esram says to please say hello. Everyone here has been waiting for her. As the baby is trying to balance to stand, she blushes and says she is more popular than she expected. She tells everyone that it is nice to meet them. In a crowd, a girl in a black robe smiles and Tinub feels this sudden pain in her body. Everyone was worried and yelled her name out asking if she is alright. Esram says if she is feeling unwell, they will heal her immediately. Tinub says it is okay. She asks herself what was that? A sudden killing intent. She takes a glance at the girl until she was heard by someone vomiting. Everyone screams it is motion sickness and Tinub thinks to herself that she just keeps causing trouble. But this actually works out better for her. She goes towards her mother and uses her power to heal her. Tinub asks her mother if she is feeling better now. The mother was confused on what happened and said her body really does feel much lighter now. Everyone was shocked by her healing magic. They say that the 4-year-old heir used healing magic. Oh my goodness. She thinks to herself that her plan as the heir is to first. One of the people in the crowd says that is something even adults struggle to do. Tinub goes on by thinking that she needs to make an undeniable impression. Tinub says everyone. She says to herself that no matter who tries to stop her, she has no intention of winding her way through life like Tinub. Tinub with a smile on her face says to let's go safely while the crowd cheers for her. She says to herself that since she is living this life again, she might as well take control of the world. The scene cuts to the castle with pastries on the table. Esram asks Tinub if it is delicious. She eats the cake and smiles and says it is not even meat, but it melts in her mouth. She tells herself that this is something she eats every day in the Holy Kingdom. There is no luxury like this. Esram says to please take her time eating. A blonde person walks in and says that he was so mature earlier, but now he looks just like his age. Esram bows down and says welcome, Your Majesty, the Holy King. Tinub was shocked and screams what in her head. She asks herself he is the Holy King. The Holy King says it has been a while. Esram. The current Holy King name is Renard Passaker. He tells them to please get up and the mother says it has been a while. Her Majesty. The mother smiles. And the Holy King gets pissed off. They say why is there an outsider here? He goes on by saying that from now on, he would appreciate it if she could leave the room. Esram was confused by him calling her an outsider. Tinub thinks in her head and says what? While the mother trembles, she says to herself that those two people. The atmosphere is strange, is it not? The scene cuts to the Holy King grabbing tea and says that earlier, it was truly surprising. Tinub thinks to herself that this person is. The Holy Knight goes on by saying that kind of divine power at her age. She thinks to herself that the current Holy King, Renard Passaker, who will become her stepfather. She smiles to herself and says he is too kind. She thinks in her head that as far as she knows, that statement is true. He lived as a paladin and received a prophecy later, and was adopted by the former Saint King. Perhaps because he lived a long life as a paladin, he was not a warm father to Tinub. The Holy Knight asks if there was someone who informed her about divine powers in advance. Tinub says no way. Well, she only lived with her mother. Esram says that is right. The baby has had exceptional divine power from the very beginning. Esram touches her shoulder and says even under such a mother, she has turned out so wonderfully. Tinub gets concerned on why this person is acting like this all of a sudden. The Holy Knight asks if it is about Ibr. Tinub thinks to herself Ibr. The Holy King is a very cautious person. A person like that would call someone by their name in a friendly manner. That fierce expression from earlier too. As expected, there is something between them that she does not know. The Holy Knight says then, did she not have anyone she was close with? Tinub says yes, no one. As Esram's heart breaks, Esram says what about me? Tinub thinks to herself that she wonders what Ibr is relying on to act so boldly. She says to herself that she cannot let such an important card be taken away. Tinub cutely says however, if she becomes very close with His Majesty, it would be great. Both of them were shocked by what she just said. Tinub thinks to herself how is her flattery skill that she has honed in the martial world. Of course, it is a bit embarrassing to do this with someone much younger than her. The Holy King nervously takes a sip out of his tea. She thinks to herself why is the reaction of the Holy King like that? She asks herself if that was too much. She asks Father while stuttering. The Holy Knight coughs while blushing. He gets all flustered and says he would also like to get closer. He asks would she like some more cream puff. Tinub thinks to herself that it works well. Tinub says that she has eaten all the cream puffs, and the holy knight gets up and gives his own cream puff and says to eat his share too. She was shocked but then puts on a bright smile and says thank you father while taking a huge bite. She thinks to herself that this guy is quite a nice fellow. The holy knight puts his hand on her head and says he would make sure to pass the successor ceremony. He wants them to be a good father-daughter pair in the future. Tinub smiles and says yes, she will work hard. Father. She thinks to herself that thank you for his words, but he is worrying for no reason. She could pass the successor ceremony even by just using her feet, because she remembers what kind of training she received and what ceremonies she went through. And probably from what she remembers, she hears a huge scream and it was from the teacher, yelling at her. He says that she is being late for the first class and that is very rude. She thinks to herself that so from the very first day, Tinub was being bullied. Tinub says that she heard that the classes start at 8 o'clock. The teacher yells at her and says that she should be at least 30 minutes early, acting so arrogantly just because she is the successor of His Majesty the King. Tinub says to herself that the teacher who nitpicks, and a classroom with no empty seats, she can only feel malice aimed at killing her spirit. The teacher sighs, and says that the sentences must always end with Danaka. Does she understand? Tinub smirks and says she understands. The teacher was confused and the students burst in laughing. The teacher yells at them to be quiet. He is telling everyone to be quiet and Tinub leaves and says shall they start the class? She will take this seat. The teacher is asking if she is rebelling right now. Come down immediately. She points outside to use her power and asks herself if there is something useful around here. She finds it and smiles to herself. The teacher gets pissed off and says if she does not come down he will pull her down. As Tinub jumps off, everyone was startled and speechless. The teacher started panicking and lets out a huge scream. She says to herself that no matter how many times it is the second time, the feeling of falling is still not great. Still she gets picked up by the Holy King. She says to herself that in this life, there is someone who will accept her. The Holy King was baffled and says daughter. She thinks to herself that it was definitely something that was deliberately arranged, but she ended up being flustered. The Holy King grunts and says why her daughter is coming down from the sky. She says that a face that worries and gets angry for her like this. The Holy King gets pissed off and says who is the teacher in charge of the class now. She says to herself that is a bit unfamiliar to her. Silence erupted in the class. All the students were nervous. The Holy King asks if it is him, the insolent one who dared to trample on the sprout of a king ordained by God. He sighs and says it seems the role of an educator does not suit his disposition. He shall assign him to a place where his abilities can flourish. He sentences him to 10 years of labor in the mines and healing service. The teacher screams, Your Holiness, please anything but that. The girl thinks to herself that just like that, cutting ties outright, she did not expect him to go this far. The Holy King puts his hand on her shoulder and says, My daughter, this is the fate of those who would harm her. If she has anything to say, speak now. She says to herself that once again, that look of concern. It is a little embarrassing. Tinub blushes and says so. Did she not tell him not to say gu instead of na? To the teacher. The teacher says no and Tinub laughs to herself. The teacher screams it is da or ka, not na. The soldier says how dare he cause such a commotion. The teacher screams that na is absolutely wrong. Tinub sighs to herself and says he is just digging his own grave. The Holy King orders them to drag him out. The scene cuts to the girl yawning and says no lessons today. How boring. She hears a scream saying little one. Tinub says to hold on. Esram dashes at her asking if she is alright. What on earth did he do to someone so small? Tinub says Esram she is not that small. Esram says he thought the archbishops had stopped doing such things. She was confused and says to herself the archbishops. Tinub says wait, what does he mean? Esram says that it is an old malicious practice the archbishops used to restrain holy kings. During their youth, they would crush their spirit and force them into submission, so they would always live under their watch. But he thought those customs had died out. After all, the current king rose to power from being a holy knight. It seems he was mistaken. Esram says still, the new education priest has been carefully chosen to have no ties to the archbishops, so there is no need to worry. Besides, the girl thinks to herself that in her past life, the reason she lost the throne to those old men, it was not just because Tinub was weak. The truth was she had been a victim of the power struggle between the archbishops and the holy king. Esram says that he has decided. He is going to volunteer as her knight. Little one. That way, he can always be by her side. Tinub says no. Starting tomorrow, do not come near me, Esram. Esram was shocked and says but little one. Why would she say such a thing? Tinab turns and walks off, and Esram kept on exclaiming her name. Tinab thinks to herself that right now, her position is precarious. If she is already seen as having people loyal to her, they will target her without mercy. Instead, she will protect him, nurture him, and use him well later when the time comes. The scene cuts to Tinab being exhausted, and she thought that was the plan. The students were racing, and one of them said they cannot run anymore. Esram claps and says one last lap. Tinab gets spooked and asks why is he here. Esram says for now, he has been assigned to act as her education priest. Little one. She thinks to herself that she should have known he would not give up so easily. That punk. Tinab asks why he is making her run. There is no physical test for the oath ceremony. Is there? Esram says that is true, but a healthy body houses radiant holy power. Tinab gets pissed off and thinks to herself that how come he only says things that make sense. When the run ended, she says that she is going to die. She thinks to herself that it has been a while since she has endured without using internal energy or holy power. This is killing her. She hears one of the students says to look at them, collapsing after running just a bit. So this is what it means to be of noble birth. The other boy asks why is Sir Esram even over there? They could do much better. Tinab asks herself if they are aspiring holy knights. How amusing, little kids trying to provoke her. One of the boys screams, "You brats. Who do they think they are talking to?" Tinab says that she fell for it. The other boy takes a glance and says that they were not talking to him. Actually, he is talking about that heir or whatever and points at Tinab. The other boy says someone like that cannot lead them. The boy says that the current ruler is a former holy knight, so we trusted and followed him, but that one, she looks weak and frail. The girl, all pissed off, yells out hey and with a menace look asks if they are done talking. Both of them get startled and ask what is that. One of the boys says is that holy power. Meanwhile, one of the boys says he is done, but he can barely speak properly. Tinab says soldiers do not need words, they need fists. You fools. As she punches a tree, all the leaves fall down and one of the lady catches it. She says she told her. She is amusing. Should she just drop by and say a quick hello? Tinab. The kids are knocked out as she drops 3 children and says who is next. Anyone else with complaints? All of the kids say they are sorry and run away. Tinab sighs and says these little brats are acting up. One of the boys says isn't this more like the Demon King's successor than the Holy King's? If we mess with them, we might not even recover their bones. One of the purple-eyed boys stays quiet. The scene cuts to the Holy Knight letting out a huge laugh as he says her daughter beat up the aspiring Holy Knights. Esram with sparkles in his eyes says yes, Your Majesty. Her control over divine power was extraordinary. The scene cuts to just moments ago. Esram is staring at Tinab using her magic and Tinab is yelling that their words mean nothing. Only fists matter. You fools! Esram says to the Holy Knight that not only did she use her divine power for healing, but she also enhanced her body with it, wielding it like a weapon. At this rate, the heir's oath ceremony should pose no problem. Your Majesty. The Holy Knight says indeed. The oath ceremony is already just a week away. But is the crown his daughter will wear supposed to be this plain? Esram with a confused look says pardon? Didn't he specifically order it to be simple? The Holy Knight says he did. He hadn't even seen the child back then. How could he have known? What would suit her? In any case, they must have it remade to match her. Esram thinks to himself that he's already completely taken with her. A servant comes in a hurry and yells out, Your Majesty, you must come to the Lily Palace immediately. The Holy Knight says what's the matter? The exhausted servant says well, that is her mother. Your Majesty, the child's mother. It's said that she assaulted the child. The Holy King is shocked by hearing this. The scene cuts to the mother slapping her daughter. She gets all tired and frustrated by hurting her daughter. She yells at her on how dare she, too, disregard her with talk of the law of the Holy Kingdom? She's her child, not the child born of Renard. Tinab thinks to herself that she must be furious after ignoring the audience request. A few days ago, a maid walks in and asks what should they do. Her mother came to visit. She says according to the laws of the Holy Kingdom, she cannot meet until after the oath ceremony. The maid says yes, Your Majesty. Tinab thinks to herself that even so, she never thought this would happen in front of everyone. Are they foolish or just fearless? One of the girls says Tenebrous, are you okay? Tinab says you foolish thing. She says but. The boy tells her to just go you idiot. It's better to call the adults. The girl says she understands. The mother says Tenebrous. She's not saying she wants to do anything to her. She just wanted to see her. Didn't she want to see her? Why is the child who used to listen so well acting like this all of a sudden? Tinab stays quiet and says anyway, there's something she wanted to give her. The mother is surprised and says oh, really? Well, how much did she like her? What could it be? Could it be the treasure of the Holy Kingdom? Teneb uses her spell and touches her mother's legs. She collapses and screams, what is this? Why can't she move her legs? What did she do? You! Is she not going to undo this right now? Teneb smiles and says she should be able to untie it in about an hour. She thinks to herself that she hit the exact pressure point. It's called pressure point sealing, a basic technique in the martial world. The mother says a technique that blocks flow of vital energy. Does she think she'll get away with this? If Ren finds out, Teneb thinks to herself of, Ren? Did she also have a nickname with Ren? Even that scoundrel, the Holy Knight. Teneb sighs and says no matter how much it's from the past, how could she be so blind when it comes to judging people? She used to call her cute and easily pass over it. Teneb says mother. She knows she has been constantly ignored by father these past few days. Well, did she mention that she was asked for money when she was told to leave and got rejected? The mother exclaims and stutters while saying rejected. They decided to talk it through again. Okay? Teneb says mother. The thing she wanted to give her. It's not a treasure, but an opportunity. A chance to leave. Teneb makes this menacing face that it even makes the mother scared. Teneb thinks to herself that she pretended to be nice in front of the kids just now. But should she start properly extracting it now? Since she has to threaten, she should fix her lisp a bit. Teneb says mother. You received a bribe after coming to the Holy Kingdom, didn't you? You received money, too. The mother is scared and asks what is she talking about? Who would know her and come to her with such things? The girl thinks to herself that from her reacting, it seems she accepted it. There's no way this woman would act differently from the past. Teneb says to take the bribe she received and quietly return to the Empire. If she tries to use her name again, then she holds her mother's mouth and says she will make sure she can't return, even if she wants to. The mother tells her to let go, and she thinks to herself how a child can have this much strength. She lets go and says all right. She let go with a smile on her face. She'll be going now. She should reflect here for the next hour. The mother grunts and screams so. What? She thought she'd be scared? Teneb turns and the mother starts coughing. She keeps on coughing till she passes out. Teneb is confused on what just happened. She asks herself why is this happening all of a sudden? She didn't attack. The girl with a mask on her eyes says she can't let this happen. If she heard her cute wildcat. Teneb turns and thinks this energy. The killing intent she felt that day when she came to the Holy Kingdom. This guy. Teneb screams you. On her first day in Holy Kingdom, she was the one who flew a blade at her in the square. The girl in the robe says she didn't expect her to recognize her so quickly. She's flattered. Teneb crashes out and says to stop smiling unnecessarily and reveal her identity. The girl in the robe says well, why doesn't she find it out by herself? Teneb uses her magical power and the girl in the robe dodges it. She says oh dear. Teneb in her head just realizes she read her move. That was a surprise attack. With muscles enhanced by divine power? The girl says of course. If she can figure it out, that is. She gets super close to Teneb which pisses off Teneb. The scene cuts to Teneb getting exhausted and the girl in the robe says see? She told her it wouldn't work. Teneb pants and says this can't be. She thinks in her head that is she losing to a kid who looks 9 years old? This unparalleled genius. The girl says oh, that cut way of speaking finally came out. Teneb says in her head damn it, she used too much divine power. Even her tongue's giving out. The girl says why doesn't she stop wasting her strength? That's not why she came here today. Teneb yells like hell she will. She will fight until she wins and tries to punch her by using her power. The girl says that it's useless. She told her. As she dodges her punch. The girl says you dodged that. And another hidden punch comes towards her. Teneb in her head says great. At this rate, she'll land the hit. The girl uses her barrier making Teneb punch herself instead. She asks what this is. Is this divine power? The girl yells Teneb. As Teneb blacks out, she wakes up to the girl in the robe around her. Teneb is confused and says what the? She? Is she okay? The girl's eyes get revealed and she says what is she doing? Charging in like that? She could have heard her. Don't do that again, okay? As she touches her cheek. Since Teneb's cheek is hurt by her own punch she groans in pain. They hear a yell of Esram calling her out and asking where she is. Teneb says Esram? The girl in the robe says let's meet longer next time. Teneb, make sure to treat your wounds. Teneb tells her to wait but she vanishes. Teneb is shocked and Esram finds her and asks what is she doing here alone. Teneb turns and asks Esram if he saw a girl with blindfolded eyes pass by. The Holy King says that he didn't see such a person. The Holy King says to Teneb that he told her not to meet her mother until after the pledge ceremony. He sees the wound on her face and yells at her asking what are those wounds. Esram says how could such wounds affect her baby's beautiful face? The Holy King says don't tell me. The mother wakes up from her slumber and is confused on what just happened. She asks herself why she's lying here. She wakes up to both Esram and the Holy King staring at her dead in the eyes. The mother screams, "What? Why is everyone looking at her like that?" The Holy King says to take this woman away immediately. Esram says yes, Your Majesty. Tinab says wait a second, bother? It's not her doing as she whimpers. The mother screams why all of a sudden she just woke up and found herself here? At least tell her why. The Holy King glares at her. The scene cuts to a nurse, saying these wounds are caused by a clash between divine power and magic. The Holy King says magic? Is she certain? The nurse says yes, Your Majesty. Without a doubt, she has already cast a healing spell on the wounds, so they should heal in a day. The Holy King says very well. She can leave. She bows and says yes, Your Majesty. The girl thinks to herself that earlier, the force that deflected her definitely felt like divine power. And yet, that young magician uses magic? The Holy King sighs and says having a child adds a spark to life. The Holy King says don't you agree, my daughter? Tinab says to herself that expression? It's exactly the look her master had whenever she caused trouble. This is serious. Tinab says Father, are you mad at her? In a cute wholesome way. The Holy King stays quiet and raises his hand. Tinab thinks she's going to get hit, but the Holy King pats her. Tinab is shocked. The Holy King says he's sorry. He should have paid more attention to her safety. The girl thinks to herself, what is with this? He wasn't like this in his past life. Why is he suddenly so sentimental? Tinab says no, it's her fault for not being strong enough. From now on, she'll train her stamina, and anyone who dares to mess with her, she'll just... The Holy King laughs and says truly, her daughter is brimming with energy even in a situation like this. The girl thinks to herself that's a relief. She has no immunity to these sentimental moments. The girl says, by the way, Father, is it possible to use both divine power and magic together? The Holy Knight says no, they are opposing forces. It's impossible. He asks why is she asking that all of a sudden? Tinab says because the one who wounded me wasn't Mother, but a young magician, and she's certain she saw it. She was using divine power too. The Holy King tells her to say that again. Tinab, from the beginning, in detail, says the Holy Knight with a very serious look. Moonlight is reflecting on Tinab's face. The Holy King sitting beside her. He has this very concerned look. He hears a voice from Esram saying, Your Majesty. As per his instructions, they have strengthened the borders around the castle, both inside and out, and have started tracking the young magician secretly. The Holy King stands up and says yes. Esram, do they have any leads on the magician? Esram says no. There were no traces of magic or suspicious holy power being used anywhere inside the castle. Holy Knight says to himself, not even a trace in the castle's barrier. He thinks to himself that it's not that he doesn't trust that child's words, but this is really unbelievable. The Holy King has a flashback to Tinab saying she's sure she saw it. She saw the holy power being used too. The magician, who appeared to be about 9 years old, attacked her mother. As a result, her mother fainted. She tried to find out the identity of that magician, but it was beyond her abilities. Silence drops and the scene turns back to the Holy King thinking. The Holy King asks Esram, what about the situation with Iber? Esram says the Marchioness of Dimini continues to claim that she has no memory of things from the moment she entered the lily garden. Sweat runs down the Holy King's face. He has a flashback of a girl saying she loves him. Rin, let's leave all their status behind and live happily together. The Holy King brings her close and says Iber. The Holy King goes on a thought that no matter how much things may have changed from the past, she's not the type of woman who would hire a magician. Then, did her memory really get erased because of that magician? There aren't many people capable of bringing a magician of that caliber into the castle. That means, the Holy King calls out Esram, and Esram says yes, Your Majesty. The Holy King says that from now on, they need to increase the surveillance around the Archbishop. The scene cuts to Tinab's school where she's awakened from a slumber by her friends. They ask if she's okay. Does it hurt anywhere? Tinab says yeah, she's fine. One of the girls asks Tinab if it's okay to sit next to her. Does she want to read a book together? Tinab says sure, thanks. She thinks to herself with a smile that just yesterday they were all being distant. But kids are so simple, aren't they? It was a good idea to show off herself like that yesterday. All the girls laugh with Tinab. Meanwhile, the boy with violet eyes thinks to himself that a monarch. Is he the prince of the empire? It might be difficult, but... One of the boys asks Tinab, hey, is what you said true? that your mother is going to be expelled from the castle. The other girl says, does that mean Teneb can't see her mom anymore? That must be sad. One of the kids stands up for her and says, Briar, Sia, why are you suddenly asking about that? It's rude. Teneb says it's okay. Cherai, because it is true. She doesn't think Teneb wants to see her mom either. Silence erupts and the kids say Teneb's mom was scary. The other says yes, she was like a wicked witch. A boy walks up to her and hands her something and says, right, she wasn't a good mom anyway. Here, eat this and forget about her. One of the girls says they never seen Monarch give someone something. Have they? The other student says it's true. It's surprising. One of the boys says to Monarch, he's actually a good guy. Huh. Monarch gets all shy and says to not act like they are close. Teneb thinks to herself about Monarch Lu. Actually, this guy was also worried about her. Teneb gets a flashback of Monarch saying to don't tarnish the Empire's honor. You fool! Teneb says to herself that in her past life, she was like a huge pest to him. She opens the bag and it is filled with biscuits. One of the girls says, what is this? And Monarch is shocked, how could she not know this snack as an imperial citizen? Teneb thinks in her head that she has never had proper food, let alone snacks. She probably fainted from not being able to eat properly. Teneb says that maybe he didn't know about it either. Anyway, after the vow ceremony, he'll become a citizen of the Holy Kingdom. This makes the boy pissed and he tells her to forget it. He yells at her to eat it or don't. You traitor. Teneb thinks to herself that why is he saying that all of a sudden? What did she even say? As the boy walks off angrily, one of the students says that's because he really hates the Holy Kingdom. He's the only one who came from the Empire. Teneb says, really? She looks at the cookie and ponders. She says, wow, Mahita. So this is Empire snack. Huh? She says to everyone to eat it too. Empire snack is so delicious. Everyone says, really? They want to try it too. One of the girls says, me too. The other girl says, wow, this is delicious. Monarch's baking skills must be amazing. This is the first time she had an Empire snack. And it's so good. Monarch gets all flustered. Teneb calls out Monarch and asks if he brought this for her. Monarch, all flustered, says no. His mom just gave it to him. Traitor. Teneb asks why she's a traitor. If she moves to the Holy Kingdom to become the Holy King, does that make her a traitor? Monarch really doesn't have an answer and Teneb sighs and says to herself he probably realizes how nonsensical that sounds. Doesn't he? Teneb asks why does he hate the Holy Kingdom? Monarch says he was forced and separated him and his mother apart. That Holy King guy. Teneb, with a smile on her face, pats his head and says she's sure he's upset, but don't be so angry. If you are doing well, Mom will be happy too. Got it? Monarch is startled and confused. Teneb says yeah. He answers well. She thinks to herself that he must have had a hard time coming all this way. Even though he's a prince, he's still a kid. Monarch blushes and says no. Teneb says yeah, it's okay. The scene cuts to a prison cell where the mother screams that they have been starving her and now they want to kick her out. She's the mother of the successor. Do they think Teneb will just sit back if they treat her like this? How dare they do this to her? As the guard throws a bread on the floor, the mother jumps at the bread out of excitement. She startles for a while and looks up. She asks who is he to help her. The guy in the robe says he's the one who will save her, now that she has nowhere else to go. The mother screams, how can she trust that? Who even is he? The man in the robe grabs her arm and she asks what this is. He uses holy power and she realizes this is holy power. The man in the robe asks if she believes him now. The mother glares at him and screams by saying he is. A blue mansion is shown where a person calls out the girl in the robe and asks where is she going. Ashit? She asks if he's here. Archbishop? The person's full name is Archbishop Geffert. He says that the whole country is tense before the swearing-in ceremony. She should have been told not to show herself to anyone. The girl puts down her robe and says she went for a walk because she was told to keep her body healthy. The memories of those she met were erased as ordered. The man says yes. After meeting the mother of the future heir, her memory was completely erased. But Ashit. Archbishop holds her mouth and menacingly says that he'll let it pass this time, but don't do anything useless again. Just do as he says. Then, she'll assume the position of successor at the swearing-in ceremony because it will be her. Ashit flicks his hand off and says if he's thinking of harming that child during the swearing-in ceremony, stop. There are too many eyes watching and it's too dangerous. Besides, their goal from the start was only the Holy King, right? Archbishop smiles and says it's a big problem. She worries about everyone else. The girl gets worried and Archbishop grabs her head. He says how dare she even give him advice. She has grown a lot. She used to be a child who never said a word against what he said. The girl is in pain and Archbishop says to tell him. Who is he? Red magic starts flowing through her brain and she asks herself who is she? The girl gets flashback of a city that has been raided. Ashit, who was a child, is terrified. She keeps on calling her mother and father while whimpering, until a man gives his hand out. It is Archbishop. The girl is relieved to see the man with a friendly smile, but the scene cuts to her being tortured by magic. She says the benefactor who saved her life is Archbishop Gefford. He asks so, who is his enemy? He's talking about the person who killed her family and completely destroyed the Mage Kingdom. The girl gets flashback of the enemy being Renar Fossaker.